I am watching Wicked Part 1 for probably the 10th time, and I really wanted to review it because I see so many similarities between Elphaba and myself. And the reason why is because I think that she is super empathic, very highly sensitive, and I honestly think she is very autism coded. So as someone with autism myself, I recognize a lot of things that she went through in her life. I mean, I didn't exactly, go through all the magic and the Wizard of Oz or whatever like she did, but there are so many similarities to what I've gone through. So, okay, let's get into it. Okay, so first off, this might be a little bit dark, but it's crazy that this movie starts after Elphaba is dead. The movie started after the person who was campaigned against, who was basically bullied, who was basically pushed into isolation to become evil after she died. And everybody cheers. And so many of these people right here that are cheering, they may have known of her family, but they likely, only knew that she was green and she was supposed to be mean, that she was supposed to be evil. And it's just so sad because we're seeing a celebration of death of a person, and these people are so dumb. I'm sure that most of these people in this type of town wouldn't have the ability to think of her as in any sort of gray area. They just decided, oh, I'm supposed to know that she's evil. I'm supposed to just think she's evil, so I'm going to believe it. And I'm going to celebrate her death. And so if you are a sensitive person or autistic, you tend to see the underlying emotional issues. You're sensitive to what might be under the surface and what isn't just shallow. Especially when you're autistic, we see a lot of patterns. These people were just told she was evil. So right away, you have an environment where most of the people do not seem to be thinking more in the gray areas. They may just accept whatever is told to them. So that already is not a safe environment. Thank God she at least had Dulcibert. Thank God there was actually at least one ally growing up. I relate a lot to Elphaba here, where she has her picture book and where she dreams of meeting Oz, the Wizard of Oz. And she's like, he's gonna grant all your heart's desires. And she's kind of in this fantasy. She knew, because this is how I was, and how I still am. When you're really sensitive and empathic and maybe other people are overwhelming, or maybe you find that not everybody feels safe, you may escape into sort of a fantasy world where at least you hang on to something that feels safer. For her, it's this idea of Oz. She idealized him. And she... in this scene, when she talks to her sister, she's like, it's okay. I'm still hopeful. I think everything will be fine. And she holds on to that, and that's great. But then immediately we see these kids are bullying her. And she can't, and here we go. And right here we see she can't control her emotions, especially this young. And so she reacts. And so these rocks, she's not trying on purpose. She doesn't know how to use her powers yet, but she's not trying on purpose to attack these kids. Her reactions, she couldn't control. I mean, and why would she? She's also a kid. But now these kids think that they're being attacked by her reaction. And it's crazy because as ostracized as it looks like Elphaba has been since she was a kid, I mean, her dad obviously doesn't like her. She still has the ability to be empathic enough for her little sister, even though she has gone through so much herself. And that is such a classic, empath and autistic type of person where, yeah, maybe it is hard because you have accepted that a lot of people don't like you, but you still have in your heart your sensitivity and your care for other people, and it's still there. Sometimes, though, it's not helpful for us. Like, yes, we kind of have resilient compassion. You know, even if most people around me suck, shit, I still have, why can't I turn my compassion off? Like, can I not, in some ways it's still protective. It's sort of what keeps Elphaba surviving in her family unit. Like, obviously her dad, like, he doesn't like her, but he does use her. She is useful to him as someone to take care of her little sister. So I feel this a lot, like, as an empathic person. Like, I know that sometimes people misconstrue my sensitivity as not being strong enough to take on other things. So what I'm most useful for sometimes is to be caring or to be a support system to other people. And it's something that I've definitely learned to resent. But with her, it feels like, and I feel this too, where it's like, Elphaba, like, now as an adult, you see her in this scene, she has a strong sense of morality already, it seems like. She carries herself well. Like, she carries herself like somebody who knew that she had to take care of herself because she was going to be ostracized for her whole life. And she holds her head up high, but she also hasn't been able to break out of just being a support system to her family. She hasn't been able to protect herself more or to stand up for herself more with her father here. So she is just kind of reduced to being the person who supports her little sister, which she would have done anyway. But it's like, this is her father's only use of her. And so, yeah, for me as a sensitive person, I have often felt this way, where I'm just kind of like, well, I know how to lean on being really empathic for the people around me, and that's how I can survive. And it really turns into a survival pattern. Like, empathy is really good. We can call ourselves empaths, and it can be positive. But in general, though, when we talk about empaths and when we talk about trauma healing, it ends up being like someone who's really sacrificial and who is really just being empathic to other people, but not necessarily themselves. Like, and it ends up being just dangerous to us, and we get used by people. Okay, so I think Elphaba's powers are such a metaphor for her being like an autistic person. Again, I don't think I'm reaching too far. I don't know, let me know. But you see here, this is the second time, and we're only like, we're less than 25 minutes in, but we're still in the beginning of the movie. And we see twice now that she wasn't able to control her inherent powers. She doesn't know how to yet. And they come out when she is emotionally reacting to things. And that's such an autistic thing. Like, for me growing up, I was brought up in a traditional Asian family. So I obviously was not supposed to have emotions. And as much as I was kind of disciplined, I did seem like I followed rules when I did have an emotion, when something upset me. And when I was feeling really emotional, I could not control it. Actually, trying to calm me down was only going to get me more agitated. And I think for me, looking back, it was overstimulation. It was basically not being able to process or compute things. So it was frustrating and overloading to especially my young brain. And here you see Elphaba kind of do the same thing. Like, she has emotions, and it's such a big reaction that it affects her environment. Like, it's her magic powers kind of like go all over the place. And I think that's honestly such a metaphor for autism, but at the same time, I like it as a metaphor for autism because I am one of those people who calls neurodivergence a superpower. It is really hard to deal with, especially when you think about the environments that we're in and like how they're not set up for us. But I do think that the super stimulation and being able to pick up on a lot of things and being super empathic and sensitive is a power that is helpful for the rest of the world. And so that's why I consider it a superpower. And that's why in this land, in the land of Oz, it seems like it's what their people needed in order to change. This scene is the first instance we see where Madame Morrible is starting to manipulate Elphaba, and also the wizard by extension, right? And it's really sad to see because this is so real life, right? Like, there's no reason to doubt Madame Morrible. She is presented like she is like top tier, like on the pedestal. This is the person you want to impress. That's obviously why Glinda is like, I need to impress her. Why couldn't I impress her? Why did my, like, this person who's reactive and shouldn't be accepted by other people, why is she impressing her? And it's sad because this is also such a metaphor for being manipulated as a sensitive person. I'm going to interchange sensitive and empathic and autistic, but I think I'm going to overall say sensitive. But you see that Madame Morrible saw her react emotionally, and she was like, oh, I can use you. And that's really sad because here it's literally, oh, I saw that she has magic powers that she has no control over, but are powerful. I can mold that, especially since she doesn't know how to take charge of them, especially since she doesn't know how to control them yet. In sort of real life, as sensitive people, we end up also as targets sometimes to manipulative people when we show them our sensitivity, when we react. Like, I'm sure you can relate if you relate to being a sensitive person in any sort of way. Like, the moment that you show emotions, people are like, ooh, you seem to be moldable. Like, as long as I can appeal to your emotions, like, I can make you do things. And it seems like, especially since this person is presented already as someone who would be isolated, someone who seems like they need people around them. Like, I would be able to tell, you know, just by looking at her and seeing her story, just by being, you know, ostracized by being green. Like, this would be a person that you can take under your wing and you can also manipulate because they need somebody. And that's really sad, but that's also like, you know, you see in the next scenes, she's singing The Wizard and I. So she is daydreaming already, like she was in the beginning, about basically being taken away from being bullied, like solving the problem of being ostracized. Like, in this beginning, like, sort of act here, like, she's already like, oh, thank God, someone's gonna essentially save me. Now, this is a strong person, and us as empaths and narcissists and everything, we are strong people, but not everybody understands how to use that morally. And we would like to see it. We would like to see people actually recognize us for our sensitivity in a moral way. But here, and a lot of the times, it can be manipulated. So, and yeah, oh my God, she's amazing when she sings this. But it ends up being for a little bit. And what often happens when we enter into into sort of interactions or relationships of any kind, whether they are sort of here like mentor-mentee or professional, and obviously romantic or friendship-wise, when we enter into relationships as empathic, sensitive people or autistic people, I don't want to say that we are impressionable, but I think we are so hopeful and we want to be so sensitive and empathic, and we think, oh, finally, I found my person who understood this. And we don't have their minds, where we don't have the intention to always use people for, you know, to manipulate things for our own gain. So, of course, it's going to happen where, you know, we're gonna be manipulated. Okay, but you see here, Elphaba kind of falls for it, unfortunately, And Morble's like, I've waited so many years for you. You have such a talent. And it is true. She is a standout. And in life, a lot of us who are really sensitive tend to be standouts because most people try to not show that they're sensitive. They try to mask being emotionally reactive. They don't think it's safe themselves. So when someone does present as vulnerable in a way, you know, like, it is different. And so it is sad because Elphaba doesn't see it here. She doesn't know that she needs to protect herself. But basically, to me, I think she goes through this whole movie and the next movie on an arc where she learns to be a more empowered empath, and also, for me, empowered autistic. Okay, let's keep going. Also, I will say, I feel like a lot of autistics tend to have these traits as well. I think a lot of people would say that autistics didn't pick up on the social cue or whatever. But I think personally, and I know it doesn't go for everybody, but I think personally that autistics are just even more sensitive and maybe taking in a lot of more, like, you know, stimulants, sensory overwhelm than general empaths do. So I think they pick up on a lot of things, but they also have the same sort of reaction and maybe may not be able to guard themselves the same way as empathic people do. So this is why I'm putting these two together. This is why I think autistics and empaths are kind of similar, because I just think that autism is kind of just a bit more of an overstimulated empath in a way, or at least that's how I have understood it. Let me know if you disagree or if you have other thoughts. But yeah, that's why I think an autistic person would also go through this. Like, they would think, like, oh, finally somebody who, you know, recognizes me, who isn't putting me down for my autistic traits. You know, obviously, you're going to be drawn in. Okay, so I think Elphaba's high justice sensitivity makes her autism coded. And I know, just sidebar, that a lot of us who are autistic don't recognize justice sensitivity as a trait for everyone, because, of course, not everybody has high morals, and not everybody, even if we're autistic, like, actually cares about the well-being of everybody in the same way. So I know that it's better to say that we have more rigid sort of belief systems. So that's true. And some people can have low morals and be really rigid about it. And other people can have really high morals and be really sensitive and have a need to advocate for other people. I still think that that's evident in how Elphaba is right away with Dr. Dillerman here. So that's why I would consider that an autistic trait. And also because, again, I think, of course, like, she was bullied, she was ostracized, so she has a reason to not completely fall for propaganda of what everybody else believes. But additionally here, and she was raised by animals, and we're closer to them than people also. But again, here, I feel like she doesn't question at all her belief that animals should be, you know, equal to people. Like, she doesn't question it at all, but she's also one of the only people in this environment that sticks up for them. And I feel like you have to have a form of resilience or a form of rigidity in your belief system to be able to hold that, especially with how controversial this environment is. Also, in general, as people, like, it's really good to be, you know, a lot of us just have good moral values without having any sort of divergence in our brains. But I think here it's just an additional thing that keeps Elphaba going. In both movies, like, you don't see her doubt her belief systems until she encounters the wizard and she's like, what did I do? But, like, I don't think that she questions that what is right and wrong. And I think it is harder for more of the people in this universe to understand right and wrong. And she is such a standout that she is divergent in my head to the people, at least in Oz. Okay, so I'm gonna, in a different video, talk about Elphaba and Glinda's relationship, but I do want to point out, I feel like it almost falls into a typical empathic narcissist relationship. But is Glinda a narcissist? Find out in my next video. But I think that their relationship is rocky because they are such opposites. And Elphaba is completely not shallow. She is so the opposite of not shallow that I think that she also tends to dislike Glinda right away, and maybe a little bit too much. However, there's enough there where you obviously wouldn't want to be around someone that image-based. But I'll talk about that in a different video. But you see here, like, she is still a little bit more susceptible to believing in Glinda right away. Like, Glinda did apologize for basically bullying her right here. But I do feel like Elphaba maybe forgave her too quickly. And I would say this is something that a lot of us who are empathic, sensitive, autistic, maybe tend to do a lot. It's not bad though, because we are ultimately, our value, our self-respect isn't necessarily, lower for forgiving people. It's good that we do so that we don't hold grudges. But I do think that there needs to be more boundaries when you have a friend like this, when you are around someone like this who literally tried to, this is a person who tried to publicly humiliate you. And right after that, you were like, oh, okay, well, she said she was sorry. And I'll be her friend now. Actually, I'll be her best friend now. And so that's really good because we do want to clear out, no one's perfect and we learn from each other. But at the same time, I think that it is safer to build more boundaries around a person like that who just pretty freshly wanted to humiliate you. And I think, again, as empathic, sensitive people, it can be a little bit dangerous to be so forgiving. And we see that play out in the next movie. Even with her and Glinda, I would argue, we see the consequences of her also just not having boundaries around that friendship. So I would say her relationship with Glinda is complicated. It's not the healthiest friendship. They do learn a lot from each other, though. And so I'll talk about that in a next video. But yeah, basically the point is, I think that a lot of us would forgive somebody right away and go as far as becoming their best friends right after they try to publicly humiliate us and bully us and try to become dominant over us. I could tell you a couple of the people that are closest to me where that was basically the only type of relationship I knew, where I was supposed to take the role as being sort of lower than, if it was not my friend, then a relative or whatever, where I had to take this sort of I'm less popular than this person. This person has more power over me. Obviously, it's an opposites attract sort of thing, but at the same time, it does kind of feel like, it's not the most equal relationship. So that's something to keep in mind, especially with something like friendships, because I think with friendships, it can be harder to spot than romantic relationships. If you basically, let me put it this way. Say Glinda did, say a person you were dating did exactly what Glinda did. The person that you were dating was just about to bully you, and he is telling you, or they are telling you, I want to give you a makeover. I want to make you more popular. I want to influence you, and they are saying it in a way that's oh, I want to help you. But, if that's someone you're dating, you'd be like, wow, you're trying to manipulate me to be a different person so I can make you look better, And with a friendship, it's not necessarily that you were supposed to make them look better because you're not attached to them. But I think with a friendship, that person is still saying, I need to fix you up. I need to do these things to you. Like, I know I was previously bullying you, but it's all of these things that indicate, like, I still want to have dominance over you. And there's still somewhat of a, to me at least, I might be reading into it too much, but there's still somewhat of a hierarchy in this friendship. And again, like, I have obviously gone through this before, but I now have to keep my eyes out for, you know, when a friendship or an interaction happens where there's some sort of dominance or someone telling me, you know, to change when I really didn't need to. And so anyway, all that said, I would have more boundaries and I would not be that close to a person like this. You know, that's advice to empaths and autistics and sensitive people. All right, y'all. So now we have reached the moment that unfortunately a lot of us empaths and autistics and sensitive people have arrived at in our lives. And that is when we realize that the person that we are idealizing, that we were fantasizing about, that we're obsessed with, is full of crap. When we realize that person is manipulative and probably a narcissist. So that is Elphaba realizing it with the wizard here. And we also realize it with Marble as well. That it's pretty sad because it's kind of like Elphaba grew up almost as a belief system, like almost as something to hold on to for hope. She believed in the wizard being this powerful person who helps people. And in some ways, she also took that as like, well, I'm going to be a powerful person that helps people too. And this is what I went to school for. This is why Marble helped me. And then, unfortunately, she finds out, and she's even tricked and manipulated into harming people, or harming animals, sorry. Like, and she's even tricked into harming the beings that she wanted to protect. And it's really earth-shattering. And for, you know, it's really earth-shattering. And unfortunately, it happens to the best of us. When we realize late that this person that we've put so much trust and belief into, this person that we've put even like love into, that we've idealized in our heads, whether that is a figure like, you know, as big as, you know, whether it's your hero or it's like a person that you're dating, there is a moment where you see their true colors. And it's so sad as an empathic person to be like, shit, should I have been more cynical? Should I have not been as trusting of people? And I hate that because I have gone through this moment a couple of times.
You have no real
You know,
power.
like I have gone through a don't meet your heroes moment. I have gone through several like, oh, this guy I'm dating is actually exactly like other people I've dated, like, which is also my pattern. So I'll put that to the side for now. But I think, again, being the way that we are, being sensitive, and also still being somewhat too trusting, we end up a little bit deep into these relationships or interactions with people like this because we aren't questioning enough along the way, you know, and because we want to believe in people, because we want to believe in the best in people, because we would do that. We would be the best for other people. So why wouldn't most people be like that either? And this is where I want to point out that it is kind of that us empaths, sensitive people, and autistics are a standout. Like we are what Marble says in the beginning, like many years I've waited for someone like you to appear. Yeah. There's mostly been people who guard themselves, you know, like most of so many people I've met are going to be a lot more guarded. So many people I've met are going to be like, I cannot express my feelings. I cannot react. That's dangerous. And that is smart of them. But you see here with Elphaba, she is the main character though. She is the star. She is the change maker in this fucking like crazy ass narcissistic, unsafe environment. And that's why she is the one to sort of break the pattern here eventually, or at least help ignite the trigger that breaks the pattern. But you see that she is so different from everybody else. And so I will say that she, and I wanted to mention that because I feel like as much as we are called maybe too trusting, maybe too naive, maybe too nice, whatever, I think that we still go deeper into sensitivity. We still look deeper into things than I think a lot of people would. And looking that much more deeply, being more sensitive, being more morally aware is often the thing that needs to happen in order to solve problems and in order to protect yourself from manipulative people. So in a way, unfortunately here, we see that Elphaba is discovering that a narcissist is trying to control her. But you'll see later on that she is also the person that needed to happen to make the narcissistic system collapse. All right, we have reached defying gravity. So I feel like in this moment of the movie and in this person's path, they woke up to the fact that they have been manipulated. This is a pivotal moment in our empathic brothers and sisters and sensitive people's and autistic people's lives where they wake up. They wake up and they're like, actually, shit is crazy. Actually, I am being controlled. Actually, I don't like this. Oh my God, get me out of here. And so we often don't know what to do when we wake up. And so we try to leave, like she is, I'm literally gonna fly out of the window and away from you. And we also likely don't know what to do to protect ourselves immediately. But, we do understand okay, this isn't good. I can no longer be in this situation. We sing Defying Gravity and we try to tell our Glindas that, hey, let's not go with the crowd anymore because it's not a safe crowd. I just realized it. Maybe the Glindas in our lives are slow to realize that, and they end up staying behind while we step away from the environment. And it's sad because you see here, as she steps away from the environment, they immediately start making a campaign against her, which is such a narcissistic move. And it astounds me how much Wicked is just completely laying this out as it is such a great story because Elphaba still lives out very much an unprotected empath's life. She isn't Harry Potter where she's like, well, I am the chosen one. I have inherent powers and I know that I'm supposed to win, or there is a prophecy, or everybody is around me and everyone loves me and I have support from some people and I am the hero and I am the resistance. No, Elphaba in this movie is unfortunately a little bit more representative of what happens to an isolated, bullied person. She basically, this is what happens to people when they try to go against narcissistic rule. So you see at the very end here, Defying Gravity, she's like, I'm over this. Oh my God, I woke up. And then immediately there's a campaign against her. Immediately, Madame Morble's like, okay, we must get everyone on board. She is evil. I have rebranded her. Good. Literally, the literal campaign against her is crazy. So she becomes the scapegoat. And I feel like a lot of us who are empathic, and again, I know it might be too much to bunch these together, so warranted, but I think any of us who fall under any sort of sensitive category, like autistic, highly sensitive, or empathic, we end up becoming scapegoats because we are usually the ones to sound the alarm that something isn't right within a narcissistic system. And unfortunately, we end up not having a lot of allies. We can feel isolated, and we have this whole campaign against us, and we are painted as literally evil to the rest of the narcissistic system, to the rest of everything else. When you try to speak up against people who try to manipulate you, they're going to think that you are the problem. And unfortunately, we end at least the first half of the movie and around the first half of the actual musical with Elphaba's descent from being a sort of, an empath who was unawakened and ending as someone who realizes, oh my God, my environment is much more unsafe than I realized. Like, oh my God, I have found a major issue, a major narcissistic system issue. And so okay, I'm going to review the second movie in a different video, but I will say to end this one, it's really interesting because I think a lot of us, to put it together, I think a lot of us go through this sort of timeline when we start waking up and transforming ourselves into more empowered people. Like, we don't realize how much we shouldn't just be ignoring things, but how much we should be speaking up in order to change things. And as empathic people, autistic people, highly sensitive people, I believe, now I am the one hyping us up too much. I don't think they did that much in Wicked, but I do believe these are superpowers of ours. Even here, like it's interesting because in the movie, Elphaba isn't necessarily using her powers protectively. Like, she doesn't know how still, but realistically, she could be like, be on defense. She could be attacking these people. She has the literal power to protect herself, actually. She is actually more OP than most of these people. I think Madame Morrible can only do the elements, and Elphaba can do whatever her emotions feel like. So she is actually the more dangerous person. And if you look at it this way, she actually has a lot of power. And it's kind of interesting that she doesn't realize that still. At the end of this first half, she still doesn't realize that. And I think for us as people with sensitivity, again, now it may be harder for us to prove that it's useful, that it's a skill, that it's a benefit to be sensitive. But when you think about it again, when you are sensitive, you think more deeply than a lot of the shallow people. Sure, you might not be as self-protective, but you might actually dig into and see more issues. You may become smarter because of that. You may pick up on more things faster, especially also if you are autistic and you're seeing patterns. If trained, you can learn how to effectively and more efficiently pick up on patterns and protect yourself and be steps ahead of other people. And so I will say at the end of this first half of this review, I think Elphaba leaves like initially realizing, actually, I'm powerful and this shit sucks, which is great. And I think that's a great place to start for a lot of us who have been who have felt so bullied and ostracized, and for us, for literally just being sensitive, for like not even obviously being green, but obviously we may have other reasons why people bullied us that came down to our skin color or something physical. But for many of us, it's just simply being people who cry, like simply being people who don't hold back our emotions is why we often get targeted. And like, I think, anyway, I don't know if this was just like a crazy, like too much of a psychoanalysis of this movie, but I want to end this with saying, like, I hope that, when you think about it this way, when you think about, obviously it is hard to be sensitive in this world, and this world is not necessarily set up to help us or to accommodate for us, but we are often the solution for them. Like, it's hard. But if we think about it this way, it can be really empowering that doesn't take away from how hard it is for you, for us. But I think that a thing to take away is that we do have a thing that is useful. And I think that we have to continue understanding how to hone it and how to train it and how to use it, whether that be pattern recognition and autism, or whether that be just having more like empathy and sort of endurance to care for people. Having the power of compassion is actually going to help people. So anyway, I will now review, like in a different video, I'm going to go over, actually, my next couple of videos will be about a couple of other characters. I'll also do a part 2 on Elphaba and basically her ascent into her villain era in Wicked for Good, which I think, personally, your villain era is necessary for your empowerment. So stay tuned for that and watch that next. I'll also go over whether or not Glinda is a narcissist, and I will talk about their relationship, Elphaba and Glinda's. Okay, well, let me know what you thought. Again, if you disagree or if you want, or if you feel like there's more nuances or things, let me know in the comments below. Okay, well, peace and love. Bye-bye. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.